City. We talked about it a little bit earlier, Steve, about the fact that folks in New York City are worried that New York may not come back. We have no Broadway there now. Many businesses have moved out. You can't dine indoors, although I think that maybe that's changed. Maybe you can have 30%, but let's ask one of our New York experts. I want to bring in Gavin Wax. He is the president of the New York Young Republicans Club, and he's always a great guest. Gavin, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me again, Tudor.
Yes, so are we allowed to come to New York and eat inside now? What is the status on your restaurants?
You were slightly off in your number, not quite 30%. It's actually a 25% limit. And then we'll have to check your temperature at the door. You'll have to wear your mask. You'll have to consent to a social tracking form from King Cuomo and all the other slew of ridiculous regulations that they decided to place on these businesses that are barely going to survive as is. So it's a really sad state of affairs, but I guess we're moving slightly in the right direction.
Yeah, there's some things that people love about New York, at least they did historically. I don't know if it's going to be there in the future, Gavin. I mean, people love for theater and entertainment. They come for the finance districts to have opportunity, and they come for the food. Those are things that they come for, and all of those things, the museums are closed, a lot of the restaurants are closed. Some of them aren't going to make it, from what I understand, obviously. Real estate prices are collapsing in Manhattan. Restaurant owners are saying, gee, Mr. Mayor, if you shut us down one more time, we're not going to be here. And some of them are already gone, as you well know. It's really devastating to New York City, isn't it?
It absolutely is, and you said it right. I mean, what makes this city great is the culture, is the nightlife, is the culinary traditions, all the restaurants, the great places to go out, and they're completely destroying everything that makes this city great and why people put up with the high cost of living here. And you know, we're a few months out from December, and this new order that they're allowing some indoor dining is really just a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. It's not going to help the massive number of businesses that have already failed. It's not going to stop the over 500,000 people who have already left. We need some serious reforms. We need some serious fixes. And this governor and this mayor just don't seem to be up to the task.
Gavin, a lot of people are complaining about safety in the city now. We have been talking today about what happened in LA with those two cops that were shot in the head while they were sitting in their squad car. But over the weekend in New York, the police released surveillance video of a teen who was shot in the head. Now, this was in broad daylight in the Bronx. He was shot first in the foot, all of his friends scattered, and then he was killed right there on the street. Is this something that we just historically have not heard about that happened in New York, or are the streets of New York becoming more and more dangerous?
Oh, absolutely the latter, Tudor. I mean, this is a city that used to be the largest safe city in the United States, and now we're descending into something you would see in Chicago or Detroit. Crime is on the rise. It's already surpassed all the previous records of the last few years, and we're not even finished with the year. Violent crime, shooting, all the worst types of criminality are just rising drastically on the streets of New York, and it's because of these policies that put criminals ahead of law-abiding citizens that are making these communities unsafe. And the people affected most by this are these outer borough, lower-income minority communities, and they're the ones that are suffering at the hands of violent thugs. They're the ones suffering as the businesses flee, and they're the people that supposedly the Democrats are standing up for. But the Democrats won't care about what's going on in, say, the Bronx or East New York or wherever it is, because they're safe in their doorman building on the Upper West Side, and they can just go to the Hamptons and escape it all, and they don't have to face the consequences of their own policies. But this is becoming a serious issue in New York. We're regressing back to a very dark time, and we need to push back. We need to unshackle the NYPD because they can do the job, and we need to let them do their job.
Gavin, I'm going to defend Detroit a little bit, believe it or not. Because Detroit actually is safer than Chicago or New York right now, because they have something we like to call a chief of police, James Craig. They also have something we like to call a mayor that actually does his job, unlike Lori Lightweight in Chicago or de Blasio in New York. Dugan in Detroit is actually keeping the place safe, and they're not allowing for these riots to go on in Detroit. It's one time in my lifetime you can say, look at this, look at the compare and contrast, and that's got to be demoralizing for the business owners of Manhattan. Look at the property values crashing, but if you go out to Long Island and some of the other places, the property values have increased because of the massive lockdowns from the pandemic, correct?
Absolutely. It's ridiculous. You could drive a few miles over the Queens into Nassau border out on Long Island and you could have full indoor dining. Everything seems normal. But if you're in Queens, which is a borough of New York City, you're in a completely different world. And the businesses are struggling and they're not going to survive. And people are going to continue to flee. And there goes the tax base. And with the tax base, there goes all the essential services that keep this city running. So it's a downward spiral. This is the beginning of a really, really bad time in New York's history. And I would hope things can change, but they would have to change very drastically, and the out-migration rate is just simply not sustainable. I mean, my building alone, I think, is over half empty. All I see every day are U-Haul trucks on my streets, and the only businesses that seem to be doing well anymore are the moving companies, which are having to turn people away because the requests for trucks and movers are just astronomical. So it's a really sad state of affairs, and it's a shame what's happening to our largest city.
Yeah, and CEOs are now asking for the help of de Blasio to come in and help. Traditional New Yorkers are saying they don't want New York to disappear. They want New York to be taken care of. But then over the weekend, we have this protest on the George Washington Bridge. They shut it down and no traffic goes across. So are these New Yorkers? Where are these people coming from that are shutting down the George Washington Bridge?
Oh, a lot of them are paid agitators. A lot of them are bussed in. These are professional operatives. This is not a necessarily a grassroots movement. I'm sure there are many left-wing radicals in this city, but to claim that all these different riots and so-called protests are just organic is a little bit naive. But yeah, the businesses are finally pushing back. I mean, but they have to take some responsibility for this. Many of these big corporations, many of these big businesses, particularly in New York, have been playing ball with the Democrats for years. They've been donating to Democrats. They've been supporting their campaigns. They weren't as active in backing alternatives that were more pro-market, what they sow, and it's almost it's gone too far for them really to change the course. De Blasio does not care. He's term limited, so he's going to run this city into the ground for the next year or so because he's a radical Sandista Marxist, and he could care less about what happens to the city. He's already said he's doing these policies on purpose. He knows that they're negatively impacting people and businesses. He just simply doesn't care. You could probably make an argument that this is why we don't want term limits, because at least if he had to run again for office, he probably would have had the pressure of an election to change his tune, but he doesn't care. He's going to ride this out until his last day in office, and the city be damned.
So let me ask you this, Gavin, because again, we go back to its food, finance, and fun. I mean, those kind of the three F's of New York City, right? Whether it's the museums or the shows or the things you want to entertain yourself with, or just walking down Broadway and looking at the bright lights, the great food, and of course the financial opportunities that come from running into people and different great ideas that are passed around and the people that, make the money move around in this country. Those are all things that are going on. But if it's brought to a standstill here and there is no police protection, why would anybody come back to New York? Why would they come to Madison Square Garden? Why would they go see a Knicks game? Why would they go to a show if they don't think that the New York Police Department, the NYPD, is going to be there to protect them because they've been scaled back or they've been told they can't, do their job? Why would anybody go to New York City, or any large city for that matter, and support the pro football franchise or the pro baseball franchise or Broadway or even Wall Street? How long until the protesters come to Wall Street? And it's a serious question. What can New York salvage at this point?
Well, it's a fantastic question, and it shows how arrogant and out of touch the one-party Democratic leadership in this city and state are. They think that just because we have the name brand New York City and that we have this great reputation from years past, that no matter what happens in New York, that people are always going to want to live here and want to work here and want to stay here. But that's simply not true. The name New York can only carry the weight of these ridiculous policies for so much longer. They're going to have to actually do something that's pro-business, do something to change course, to bring safety back to the streets, to care about quality of life issues that are really deteriorating the city and have been deteriorating the city far, far longer than many people are talking about. This predates coronavirus. This predates the rioting. This has been a slow downward trend for the last few years since de Blasio took over. It's obviously been accelerated in recent months, but
right.
It's just highlighting a problem that's been there.
Yep. Gavin Wax, thank you so much, president of the New York Young Republicans Club. Always a pleasure to have you on. Now, we did think that we weren't going to get to see the president because it was a closed meeting, but we are going to peek in and see what he is talking about in California with Gavin Newsom. Here it is.
Responders that are responding every day to the fires that we see here. Those are the heroes of the day.